Hey, welcome to another edition of the Flight Plan Podcast. Tim McMaster along with Zack Rosenblatt. We're going to jump right into it because Zack is in London with the Jets, where the Jets have gotten away. We're going to get into whether this trip is a really good thing for this team to just escape the United States, basically, at the point in the season where they are at 0-5. We're going to talk about the exact matchups with the Broncos, of course, too, and some other notes. But Zack, first of all, your latest story, you kind of got into the difference between a year ago and this year. The fact that the Jets have gone to London 2 years in a row is pretty cool for you, but pretty cool overall. But this trip seems very different as far as like how things are set up for the Jets, how Aaron Glenn is doing things. So I'd just love to start there, and then we'll get into the other stuff.
I mean, the number one thing is they're spending the entire week here, which Saleh was more of the mind of just going for the weekend and not really changing your schedule and like timing it out in that way. Whereas Glenn feels like being here the whole week, letting your body adjust and kind of getting away is a part of the idea here. And that's, so that's pretty different. I mean, where they're staying is different. Last year they stayed at this regal Victorian manor. That this one it's a really nice like hotel, resort and spa type situation. There is a golf course. But it's not the same like vibe. And even like the press conference room, and that was kind of like where I was honing in on for the story you're referencing, because last year it was like a whole song and dance. Like there was a huge crowd, a lot of British reporters were there. There was a lot of noise when Aaron Rodgers came out, Robert Saleh, all the Jet stars talked. The British people all asked questions. And this year we were kind of tucked into the corner of like this old garden house. It was just me, Brian Costello, and Al Iannazone from Newsday, the only reporters that were there, and Eric Allen from the Jets. So there's only like 3 or 4 of us even asking questions. There's some fans, they're kind of just sitting there, a couple British people kind of just sitting there. But it was just a very quiet, different moment. And I mean, there's a big reason for that. Might just be who the Jets are right now. Maybe it's where it's located and the fact that it's a Wednesday and a Thursday. I don't know. Like maybe it'll pick up tomorrow and Sunday. I'm sure it will, but I mean, it's just think about a year ago yesterday is when Saleh got fired. That means a year ago and like 3 days is when they lost to the Vikings. And just like the stark contrast of where they were then and where they are now is pretty crazy to think about. I mean, it all kind of ties. I just thought it all ties together because the week before that Vikings game, they had a bad loss to the Broncos, which pissed Woody Johnson off, which ultimately led to the firing a week later. Now they're playing the Broncos here, and the Broncos are like contenders. And it's the Jets, like time doesn't work the same with the Jets. It like goes in dog years, I think, because that feels like a lifetime ago that we were talking about. I mean, when they went into that Vikings game, they were a game out of first place in the AFC East. I know it was the beginning of the season, but where they were then to now, they're an absolute like mess. And we're going to get into that. Quinnen Williams had some great, honest quotes today. Garrett Wilson was great as always. We've talked to a few guys. I talked to Harrison Phillips 1-on-1. He was amazing. But yeah, the vibes are a lot different. It is cool to be back in London. This is much different. Like I keep explaining to people like because of the schedule, like we're at the Jets facility all day, every day. So people keep asking, so how's London? You getting to enjoy it? I'm like, I haven't really seen London. I've seen the hotel that the Jets are staying at for the most part. I'm hoping to get out to a pub tonight and get some fish and chips. My wife's coming in this weekend. We'll have Saturday to explore a bit. London's a fun city. Haven't really got to enjoy it yet though.
You need the airport to shut down so you get an extra 4 days there, like I got this spring. All right, let's get into what I mentioned about the team getting away and all of that stuff. There's a lot of noise in New York right now. There's a lot of noise around the NFL, obviously, about how bad this team is. You just mentioned it. There's less noise in London, where the fans that are there obviously made the trip. There's a lot more on their mind, exploring and things like that, as opposed to just worrying about how bad this football team is right now. We would kill for 2-2, by the way, which is what they were last year at this point. But let's get into, the team building aspect of this and digging themselves out of this. You mentioned you talked to Harrison Phillips. There's a lot of quotes from him in the story. He's a veteran guy, obviously. He's only been on this team for a couple of months. He's never been in this position. And it seems like he's kind of like trying to do something on this trip to try to help bring these guys together. But it's interesting because he's a guy that doesn't necessarily know everybody yet.
I know, he literally said, I don't know everybody's name. Like he's like,
that's a little surprising. I
I know. I kind of get. There's like a lot of guys, and a lot of guys
There's
come
a lot.
pass through, and like maybe you don't get to spend time with the offensive guys. But he said that in the context of like he wants to be someone who helps bring everybody together and all that stuff. But he's like still figuring all that out. So this trip kind of helps with that. But I think the I guess the phrase that they've been swinging around. I mean, I treaded on it, but the phrase they've been using around the team this week is keep swinging. Like the idea that like we just have to keep swinging. Eventually, we're going to connect. And Harrison Phillips told me this great anecdote about himself that came to his mind when they were saying that. He's like, some guys are thinking like golf, some were thinking like in terms of basketball, you just keep shooting and eventually they're going to drop. He's like, I was thinking about my first high school job where I worked in concrete, and we would have to do some work in like a basement where we couldn't fit all our equipment, and to break up the concrete they would have to use like a sledgehammer. And so he's like, so the first time you'd hit it with the sledgehammer, nothing would happen. The second time you hit it, nothing would happen. Then the third time it would crack. And so like that was like the metaphor he thought of as Aaron Glenn and everybody else was like talking about. We just have to keep swinging. Like we're almost there. We just have to do it. And to his point that you brought up, like he's never been 0-5. Most of these guys, if you think about it, usually these guys when they get to the NFL, they were part of good college programs. They were part of elite high school programs where they rarely lost. Some guys were in like, middle of the road, FBS teams or whatever. But like a guy like Garrett Wilson, obviously, for example, someone we reference a lot, he was at Ohio State. They don't lose very often. Quinnen Williams played at Alabama. He probably almost never lost in his time in Alabama. All he's done is lose in the NFL, not because of him, but that's all he's done. And so everybody is in a situation they've never been in before. Aaron Glenn, I guess Aaron Glenn has been in this situation in Detroit, but I don't know, like this trip in theory is coming at the right time. Like that's the cliche whenever a losing team goes on a trip like this, that, we get to hunker down. It's just us. We can get away from the noise. There's something to that. But at the end of the week, they still have to play a game, and they have to play it against a really good team. And if you go back to America 0-6, all this bonding time you just had, it could evaporate pretty quickly when you're getting absolutely destroyed by the local radio and the local fans and everybody who just turned on you, and you're going to go to an empty stadium next week against the Panthers. And so there's a lot riding on this game. So there's pressure. While, it's good that they're bonding, it ultimately, it only matters if they win on Sunday. So
you mentioned Garrett, and we talked about it, like, I think in the first episode, the recap episode, about, hey, this team needs leaders.
Yeah.
And in your talking about in the building and all that stuff, it seems like besides always seeming to say the right things and heartfelt things to you guys, the media, after games, before games, it seems like he really is growing into that role. Yeah,
I mean, we've talked about this dating back last year, probably the year before too. Like he's always been the one who like is doing everything the right way, cares about it in a way that you don't see from a lot of guys, even in this organization. And like the way he's been a guy that we go to after every game for his comment, because he's so emotional and wears his heart on his sleeve and just wants to win so badly for this organization. And like, he's the guy that needs to be the example. And I even asked Quinnen Williams about that. Quinnen and him are the two guys that I think you can point to as like, if everybody was like them in the building, they'd be in a lot better shape. And Quinnen even said that. He said that about Garrett Wilson. He's like, if everybody cared as much as him, or not cared, but like if everybody was the kind of player and had the kind of approach that he did, we'd be a lot better off. And that's the reality. Like he's never been 0-5, but he has a great perspective on it because he's a captain now. He's voted one. He said he viewed that as his teammates seeing the way he operated and believing in it more than like them feeling like he was being anointed the team's leader. He felt like the way he led and the way he operated and played and competed, that's what rubbed off on his teammates, and that's what's special to him. And Scott Turner, the passing game coordinator, said Garrett told him that he'd never even been a captain in his life before he was voted one for the Jets. And so he's taking that in stride. He's the guy, as we've talked about with the defense, I don't know that there's a lot of guys that are going to rally the troops in the way they need. Like Quinnen, I think, is a really good leader. I think he's more of a lead by example type, which is fine to have, but you need like the CJ Mosley types like we've talked about. I think Garrett Wilson does have that in him. He has the ability to get people to listen to him, especially because he performs even while everybody around him is struggling. Like he's having his best season right now. And I'm writing about that right now, actually. Like I got to finish it when we get off the pod. It'll publish either today or tomorrow. But just the idea that like he's the guy that the Jets need. And if everybody looks to him as their North Star, then the Jets as an organization will be better off. I think he, in a lot of ways, can even teach somebody like Sauce Gardner or something, who I don't think, like, we've talked about this, and I'm not going to like just harp on Sauce. I do think he's made of the right stuff, and Sauce cares. But I think sometimes the way he talks about things comes across the wrong way, and the way not the way he competes, but like just the way, Sauce carries himself is different than the way Garrett does. And so I think everybody can learn from Garrett Wilson, and the Jets are lucky that they have him locked up. Like we talked a lot last year about, if it kept going the way it was, I wasn't sure he was going to want to be back here, but he locked himself in, and now he's fully committed, as opposed to getting the money and then just, going through the motions. He's not doing that.
All right, before we get into the Broncos specifically, one key injury note, and that is that Jermaine Johnson likely to play at this point. I mean, obviously that's a big addition.
Yeah, I would say more likely than not. He practiced today for the first time on Thursday. He was limited. We saw him out there. I don't think he was moving especially fast, but it's hard to judge in like that setting where it's just individual drills. So even if he does play, I can't imagine he's going to get a full workload of the snaps, but they need him back. There's not much more I can add that we haven't already said with this. Like we when we talked before the season about their most important guys, I said he was one of the 3 most important players on the team, and that turned out to be true because this D-line has not been good enough. They got 1 sack last week. It was a Brady McGregor sack late in the game on a give up play. They didn't have any sacks the week before that. They had 1 the week before that, 1 the week before that, and they had 4 in week 1. So they have 4 in week 1, and they have 3 since. Their pass rush has been a disaster. And Will McDonald and Quinnen have been impacted because they're not getting any help. So all the blocking is being shaded towards them. And Will had a really good first week. He had 2 sacks, has none since. Jermaine Johnson was playing in that game. Quinnen hasn't had a sack in a couple weeks. These guys aren't hitting the quarterback. And so they need Jermaine Johnson out there. Michael Clemens, as we've said, should not be playing as much as he does. Neither should Brandon McGregor or Tyler Barron. And they need Jermaine Johnson. Also is kind of like, I think if anybody can be that leader we're talking about, I think Jermaine has that in him to be that kind of leader on this team, because he has the passion, he has the energy that you look for. And so, he can bring a big boost. I think it's a lot to say he's going to fix the defense. I think it's a lot to say they're going to turn it around immediately with him back, but he can help in a lot of ways and can make life easier for Will McDonald and Quinnen.
All right, let's turn things over to this game specifically. And one thing, looking at these teams that I thought was interesting before we go offense, defense, is that the Broncos have one problem that is the same as the Jets, and that is that they're the second most accepted penalty team in the NFL this season. 43 accepted penalties for 411 yards and 16 first downs by penalties, which is shocking to me, just thinking of the coaching staff over there and what this team's been and that stuff. But this could be an ugly game, Zach.
Yeah, but that's the funny thing. I feel if you look at the list of the teams that are most penalized, usually 70% of them, 7 out of 10 of them are teams that are winning, but they're able to overcome it, like we've said, and the Jets just don't. So, if for the Jets to have a chance in this game, it's not even penalties that I'm most worried about. If they don't force a freaking turnover, they're not going to win a game. It's time. Get it done. They've been working on it. We saw them doing some turnover drills. I was taking a video of the defensive backs were doing an interception drill, and I happened to catch Sauce as he dropped an interception and tweeted it without realizing it, and people were roasting him. I decided to take the tweet down just because that wasn't my intent when I posted that. I didn't feel like getting Sauce roasted. He was just making a play on the ball. He didn't bring it in. It's practice. It's fine. If he needs to do it in the game, obviously. He needs to get his hand on the ball in the games, but they need to force turnovers. Bro Nix is going to make mistakes sometimes if you get pressure on him. The Jets did a really good job against Bo Nix last year. He had 60 passing yards in 4 quarters in that game, which is why they should have won, and it was a disaster that they didn't. But the Broncos are a team that has designs on winning their division, making the playoffs, and going on a run, and the Jets are desperate for a win. And if you want to say the Jets have any hope, it's that the Broncos are coming off a really emotional win over the Eagles, where it took a late comeback to even do it. And they flew right from Philadelphia to London. So that means they went from Denver to Philly to London. It's a lot of travel. So like you hope those things work in the Jets' advantage. But if they don't force turnovers, they're going to lose again. That's just a fact.
You mentioned Bo Nix last year. Yeah, 12 of 25, 60 yards, one score. No picks in that game. But like,
yeah,
this is a different Bo Nix. Like throughout
Yeah.
last season, I think they got him early. And we were talking about how bad Bo Nix was as a quarterback at that point. And then he got better and better and better throughout the year. And then you think to last week, right? He leads his team into Philadelphia. He leads them down the field late in the game to go ahead. I mean, this is a different guy. And obviously, Sean Payton has had this impact on quarterbacks throughout his career as a coach. But like Bo Nix is fueling off that. And the Jets are going to see a very different guy than they did a year ago.
Yeah, I bet if you go back and like watch our pod from that game, I was probably pretty critical and making fun of Bo Nix because I thought he was terrible.
You were brutal, man.
Yeah, I thought he was awful. So I was wrong. I do think he's not like, I don't think he's like a superstar type, but he is a very mobile guy who can make things happen. And he's a lot better than I thought he was going to be, frankly. And Sean Payton is a really good coach in that way. So, yeah, I have concerns about the Jets defense. You know, Cortland Sutton's been really good for the Broncos at receiver as well. I would think Sauce moves around with him. They have a couple other young guys at receiver that are fast, like Marvin Mims and Troy Franklin are deep threats. And Evan Engram at tight end, like their passing game is a concern for a Jets passing defense that has been mostly a disaster. So, you know, I think Jarvis Brownlee's going to get a shot to play quite a bit this week. He didn't really play much at all last week. I thought he was just going to get plugged in at nickel. They played Malachi Moore there. I think he struggled. I think Brownlee's going to get a shot. We talked to him a little bit today. He's someone that can bring energy. He's somebody that's going to tackle. So, but between him and Jermaine Johnson, I just you hope that those guys can provide the boost this group needs.
The other side of the ball, in a lot of ways, I think is more interesting just because of what the Jets' offense has been, and Denver's defense is very good, and they do things the Jets have struggled against, like get to the quarterback. They sacked Jalen Hurts 6 times last week, which brings up a question that's been coming around this week, which is after Justin Fields was sacked 5 times by a Cowboys defense that has not been good. Is Field, I think we've covered this before, but it popped up again because they defended themselves, but is Fields holding the ball too long?
Yeah, it became a topic of convo this week. I don't really know what spurred it exactly, but I think it's been discussed. Honestly, Connor might have spurred it with some of the clips from our podcast that were from Jets Final Drive, because he had a whole thing about how Fields how his numbers are kind of inflated because he's getting a lot of his stats in the fourth quarter, which is accurate. Like whatever you want to say, like it's true. Yeah. You know, you can try and diagnose why he's not getting as many yards earlier in the game. They're running the ball a lot, getting off the field on turnovers, things like that. That's also all true, but it's not like he looks good in the early part of the game. And then if you look at the numbers, he has the highest time to throw of anybody but Caleb Williams. I looked. Since 2022, he has the longest time to throw of any quarterback in the NFL. That doesn't necessarily always mean a bad thing, because if you look at the list, it's all scrambling quarterbacks. But like if you just watch the games, like there's definitely moments where you're watching and Justin Fields is standing there in the pocket and he's not getting rid of the ball, and that's a big reason why he is not, you know, completing a pass, or why he's getting sacked and why he's getting hit. And that is absolutely fair to say. Justin Fields pushed back on that pretty heavily. I think yesterday, Tanner Engstrand today too said he's throwing the ball exactly when he's supposed to throw it. We talked to Scott Turner, the passing game coordinator. I think he was a little more honest, even if it wasn't on purpose. I think what he said was, Scott Turner said this: Justin's been efficient. The one thing we got to keep working on is getting the ball out on time. And he talked about like being efficient and things like that earlier in the game. But I mean, I think it's a fair critique, even if this team wants to like deny it, and and Aaron Glenn wants to keep pointing out what the naysayers are saying, while also saying we don't listen to the outside noise, which he seems to do a lot. That's a part of Justin Fields' game that's always been there. Like, we're not the first people to bring it up. So I don't think you necessarily want to say like he should just be getting rid of the ball immediately, because his superpower is running around, and he's made some amazing plays, including that touchdown he had a couple weeks ago. Like, you want him to have the ability to do that, but you also just don't want to hold on to the ball too long. And so it's a fair criticism. And I think it's kind of crazy that they're kind of pretending like it's not happening. I mean, I get Fields would say that, but Engstrand and all that, I mean, they're defending their quarterback. I don't know. But at the end of the day, he needs to get rid of the ball faster. Sometimes. Other times he doesn't.
Denver's defense held the Eagles to 17 points, 2 of 11 on third downs. Although Hurts did throw for 280 yards in that game, so they were effective through the year. Let's talk about that air game besides Fields on the other end. Garrett Wilson against Patrick Surtain. That's kind of the matchup that stands out in this game as far as head-to-head.
Yeah, Garrett had a great quote about Surtain, who obviously respects quite a bit. He said, I think he's a great player. Anytime I get reps against him, for me, they've played them like 5 years in a row, which is crazy, or 6. Anytime I get reps against him, for me, is like a game within the game. The number one thing I respect about him is his feet. He truly trusts his feet. I would say it's rare that you see that. The way people teach it is to get away with cheating at cornerback, but this dude is playing defense. It's special to see. I feel comfortable going against DBs like him. I embrace the challenge, but man, he's really good. I hope I get the best of him sometimes this weekend because, I mean, it's just a great way of putting it. Like he's a kind of an old school shutdown cornerback. Like it's not a lot of like even the stuff Sauce does where he kind of gets away with being handsy sometimes. I don't think there's as much of that with Surtain. You know, he's a second generation NFL player. His dad was a really good NFL player as well. And he's been so much better than I think even the Broncos probably thought when they drafted him. So he's going to be on Garrett Wilson. This is going to be the hardest challenge Garrett's faced this season. He's succeeded against everybody that he's faced this year. He's having his best season, like I said, statistically. But this is going to be his biggest challenge yet. And if Surtain can shut him down, nobody else has shown receiver-wise that they can step up. Like I don't have many other ways to say that. Arian Smith and Josh Reynolds and Lazard's not even going to play. He stayed home for a personal reason. I don't really know what. And who else even have it?
We did get Mason. I will say
Johnson. Yeah.
Mason Taylor last week. I didn't notice this right away after the game, but 12 targets, 9 catches.
He's gotten better.
67 yards. You'd like more yards out of 9 catches than that, but like at least he's been an outlet.
He's an outlet. He's not, but they need somebody down the field who can make plays, and they just haven't had that. So, Arian Smith's been getting a lot of snaps. Maybe with experience, he'll add something. But if Surtain shuts down Garrett Wilson, they have no passing game. That's like what you have to assume at the moment. So that's my biggest concern going into this game. Can Garrett Wilson overcome it? I think he can, but can Justin Fields overcome it is the bigger question.
Yeah, and how much can they run the ball on this Broncos D? Because that's really going to be key. Back to the other side of the ball real quick, because we should mention JFM.
Yeah,
Jonathan Franklin Myers, who there's 2 angles to this, right? There's what he's doing there, but then like what the Jets are doing without him, which isn't good.
Yeah, I mean, that trade is something that the fans bring up quite a bit because it wound up being one of the worst moves of Joe Douglas's tenure. I think this team got starry-eyed for somebody like Hassan Reddick, who, if you look at the numbers, was one of the best sackers in the NFL. But they just kind of ignored the contract stuff to a degree, and so they felt like they had to trade John Franklin Myers so they could afford to bring in Hassan Reddick. When John Franklin Myers was the glue of that defensive line, he played defensive tackle and defensive end. He was consistent. He was really good week after week. He was a leader in the locker room, one of those guys we've talked about that they're missing. You know, he made Quinnen Williams' life a lot easier, and I just think they really, really miss him. And that trade, I mean, they basically dumped him for like a 5th or a 6th round pick, which was crazy in the moment, even crazier in retrospect because he's been really, really good for the Broncos. He's a big part of that pass rush they have. And I mean, everything I heard, John Franklin Myers did not want to leave the Jets. If anything, I heard that first year he was gone, he missed being with the Jets. Like, he's a loyal guy. Even with all the losing, he did not want to leave the organization. He would have signed a similar contract that he did with the Broncos, I think, which was he took like a pay cut from what the cap hit was with the Jets and extended it over like 3 years. He basically took his cap hit that year and spread it out over 2 or 3 years, which is highly affordable. And I don't see why the Jets couldn't have done that. And they didn't. And so they decimated the defensive line. And now you're looking this year and this group is just not as good anymore. And you're missing a guy like that. You're missing a guy like Bryce Huff. You're missing all these guys they've had over the last couple of years. And now this defensive line is no longer a strength in the way it used to be. So, JFM is kind of the perfect player they could use right about now. And they just gave him away for nothing for the team that they're playing against. And he's gonna let them know it this week, I'm sure.
Yeah, and we'll see if he gets in the backfield and gets to Justin Fields. All right, let's move on to picks. Here we go. Things are tightening up a little bit at the top of the pick segment. Johnsy, we mentioned last week, big lead, but he slipped back a little bit in week 5. He only had 4 correct picks out of 10. So open the gap a little bit. And CSM McGrath, if you're watching on YouTube, I have the standings up. Came through with 5 last week. So nobody's lighting the world on fire, but it's 66 points for Johnsy, 62, which is basically equivalent.
I had a good week last week. I had a good week last week. I was in 5th place. Yeah. Finally. Oh, yeah. Look at that. On a comeback trail.
There you go. I did not. No, sick. Oof, bad week. I'm plummeting off. All right, so let's look at this week's games.
All right. Well, should we start with the Jets game? Because it's the first one anyway. So it's plus 7.5 on Jets final drive on Monday. I believe I said I picked Denver minus 7.5. I'm going to stick with that. I'm like I said, I'm in the stage where I need to see it before I believe it. 7.5 is a big line. I could absolutely see the Jets covering because, like I said, the Broncos could be reeling a bit, but I just think the Broncos are such a better team. And I think they're going to come prepared, and I just don't believe in this Jets team right now. So I'm going Jets. I'm going Broncos minus 7.5.
I'm going with jet lag to hopefully make jet lag.
There you go.
Colorado to hopefully keep the Jets in this thing. I actually took the Jets because of the spread. I don't see them winning this game, but I'm hoping they can keep it tight. And I get that. Even though last week I said the same thing you did, and I said I wasn't going to pick them until they won a game. And here I go. Optimistic Tim. All right. Anything else stand out to you? I was looking through this a little bit, and Buffalo Atlanta on Monday night I thought was interesting because I just think Buffalo is going to be really angry coming off that loss at home. And I don't think Atlanta is that good. So I just think the Bills roll in that game with a 4-point spread. That one was surprising to me. What else stands out to you?
I'd say Eagles, Giants, even 7.5. I just think the Giants stink.
I took the Giants. I don't know why. I'm
it's a big line
that as we speak.
I would say, let's see, a couple of these jumped out just now when I was looking. Colts minus 6.5. The Cardinals feel like a bit of a mess right now. Their coach just got fined for yelling at his player or whatever. I said Dolphins plus 4.5 at home because the Chargers are pretty banged up. I don't think the Dolphins are good, but Chargers really banged up. Patriots minus 3.5. I think they might be pretty good. They just beat the Bills, and the Saints I don't think are very good. So there's a lot of interesting games this week, though. I'm curious to see if Shador is the number 2 for the Steelers game. Like, so would they have to play him if Dylan Gabriel got hurt? Like, you can't rule that out.
Has to be, right? He has to be.
Yeah. I mean, I saw some rumblings that they
now played for that entire division, except he needs to get to the Steelers at some point.
Yeah, I saw some rumblings that the Browns might do Bailey Zappi as their number 2, which would be a real shot in the face to Shador. So I'm very curious to see what happens there.
So I have one question about the Patriots. That win, obviously, in Buffalo was pretty impressive. But you spent a lot of time with Mike Vrabel to write that story that you wrote a year ago. Award-winning story, I will add, from Mike Vrabel. Is this what you expected with him taking over? Like, did you expect it this quickly, that this team is now 3-2, and really they're a bad loss to the Raiders from being in first place in the division?
I mean, not only that, but they should have beat the Steelers as well. They just had some random turnovers that game. Like, that was purely the reason they lost. And I know that's an excuse thing you hear over here sometimes, but I thought they were going to be a lot more better. I thought they were going to be more competitive. At the end of the day, the teams that usually make the biggest leaps from year to year are the ones like that were bad the year before, are the ones that get an upgrade at coach and or get an upgrade at quarterback. And they have both of those because Drake May was a rookie. He was banged up last year. He's looking really good now. I think
he looks like Josh Allen. He looks like early Josh Allen. It's kind of
there was some iffiness at the beginning, but I don't think their roster is appreciably better than the Jets. And I think that you've seen a lot of Jets fans get angry now because you're seeing a lot of like Liam Cohen, the Jaguars. You're seeing a lot of these first-year coaches that are having success right away. And Vrabel is just somebody that, like, the way he goes about things is he's the little things he does not skip on. He's always going to preach discipline. He's always going to coach it. They really emphasize the details. They study the officials and their tendencies, and the players have to know all of that. They don't excuse penalties. And I think, I'm not saying the Jets excuse them, but so I just think Vrabel is a coach that's always going to have his team ready to go. And when you have a quarterback to match with that, and like Stephon Diggs looks like himself all of a sudden, like he didn't at the beginning of the year. Now he looks like his old self. And so
he was motivated in Buffalo. A little extra.
Yeah, true. But the week before that, he had a good game too. So I'm high on them, and their schedule, if you look at it, is like crazy easy. They have like all losing teams coming up. So if you want to believe in their ability to get to 9 wins or something like that, like a lot of it's rooted in the schedule. But if you believe in Drake May and you believe in Mike Vrabel, that's like more than half the battle if you have a good coach and a good quarterback. And, the Jets, it's debatable whether they have either at the moment.
All right. Well, I know you have a lot to do, and it's getting late over there.
It sure
get
is.
some fish and chips in you to keep things going. But any last thoughts before?
Yeah, we didn't get to it, but I just want to say Quinnen had very like brutally honest quote today, where he basically said like the defense is the reason why we're 0-5, and he said we're probably the worst defense in the NFL. Like just really like harsh and brutal and honest, and he's right. And that's the kind of thing that needs to be said right now, not this. Oh, we're close. We're competing. Like, this is what needs to be said. This is what people need to hear. This is what his teammates need to hear. And you hope that this is what spurs things forward and can get things going, because, Quinnen, out of anybody in that locker room, I talk about Garrett, like he deserves a chance to be on a winner. Like that poor guy has been on this team since 2019 and they haven't sniffed the playoffs. He was on the 2020 team that is the only one you could say was worse than this one in recent years in terms of the way they've started the season. They didn't even start 0-5, but like they were awful. They were 1-15 or whatever it was. And he was on that team, and he's still here, still kicking, still trying to be a leader. He's still setting an example. Like, guys still rave about how good of a guy he is. You don't hear anybody saying like he's turned on them or anything. And at a certain point, you wonder, is he going to want to be here anymore? Like, he would be well within his right, in my opinion, if he wanted to say, I want to get traded somewhere else. Like, I've had enough of this. And, his contract's going to be more non-guaranteed in the coming years. So it's a conversation to be had if they keep losing. I don't think they're going to trade him. I wouldn't trade him if I was Darren Muji, unless it was like a crazy offer. But like, I wouldn't blame him for thinking about, what's on the other side of the Jets.
You can't get rid of these guys who have been through this and handled it well. I feel like those are the guys that are going to help you pull through it eventually.
Yeah.
You hope. All right. Well, if anybody's out in London, look for Zack on the street. Buy him a pint.
Yes, please.
And I think the recap episode is not going to happen for this game because of both of our schedules, and Mondays. It's a holiday in the state. There's a lot. So I think we're going to be back middle of next week, where we will look back on this game and look ahead to week 7. And we'll just call it at that point instead of like trying to pull something together on Monday morning. So enjoy the time, Zack. Enjoy Belgium.
Thank you. Yep, going to Brussels.
Have a waffle for me.
I will.
All right. And we'll talk to everybody soon on the Flight Plan podcast. Thank you.